Good morning. This is a notice of a budget workshop meeting for Commissioners Court of Grimes County, a budget workshop that is being held following the previous public hearing. And this agenda item is to discuss and review Grimes County FY 2020 proposed budget.
Oh, you're waiting for me?
Well, when we chatted, this was your opportunity.
Yes.
And
The first question-
would you identify yourself, please?
I'm Mary Ann Waters, tax assessor collector. I have a question for you guys before I make a statement. Since y'all voted on the last Wednesday for the salaries for the elected officials, can they be changed at this point in time?
I believe they can.
If it's an increase, it'd have to be in the paper, and so I don't know if you got time for the publication as well. You got a month left, so
Yeah,
maybe.
I believe we do.
Okay. Because I didn't want to waste my breath if you said no. I feel that there are other elected officials within Grimes County that should have gotten raises as well, or salary adjustments, as well as the ones who did receive them. I requested one in my budget whenever I filled it out and submitted it. In my office alone, I mean, we work hard for what we do. I've received 2 certificates through the Tax Assessor Collectors Association. I'm working on a 3rd from them. We received through the Performance Quality Recognition Program through the state of Texas, DMV. We received the silver level participation. So I feel that, and that can just speak for my office. I don't know what the other offices have done. But I feel that with the comparison that we gave you, that we are still under we're being paid less than what most of the others are on an average. And so I'm requesting to get the original amount that I requested. I believe was 58. Was it 50, 57, 58?
Because you're at 52,999 something, to carry it up to 58,000.
Yes.
Mary Nichols, yes. I'm just going to use round numbers, 53,000. And you want to go to 58,000?
I believe that's what I submitted in my budget, was 58.
Well, I can't answer for the court.
I understand that.
I will share my thoughts. And that is that, one, I don't necessarily agree with my predecessor. And I think I shared that with you on having a differential or a difference in the base pay from the county elected officials versus the commissioners. And I know that, and am I okay to share our comments?
You can.
I won't if you're concerned.
I mean, that's fine. I mean,
Okay.
did you just take into consideration, we don't get any stipends from the state whatsoever.
Understood.
Only income we get is what we get from you guys. And we all work full-time here. We don't have separate jobs off site either that we have to attend to as well.
Okay. Well, we did adjust the salary for all employees, including your office, at a 2% last year.
Mhm.
And we proposed a 2.5% for the 2019-2020 budget. So in the last 2 years, that's 4.5%.
Mhm.
When Judge Lamont kicked you off to 53,000 from the 50,100 something, what year was that, Mary?
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was in 2018.
2018, okay. So that was an increase of about, what, 2,800, 2,900, something
I
like
don't
that?
think it was that much. I think it was about 2,300.
Okay,
But it
2,300.
still put us below the level that other counties with our comparison are making.
Well, and I don't debate that, it's just that we can only pay what we can afford. And other counties, they may have their expenses elsewhere. We've got the possibility of an upcoming dedicated note for the new law center, if indeed that goes forward, and at this time, that's the plan for it to go forward. So I'm trying to guide the court in a conservative direction, if you will. I appreciate what you're saying, but we've increased, like I say, 4.5% for the commissioners and your staff, for the employees and your staff. I don't know what the 2,300, what percent that represents, but that's just in the last 3 years, and we hadn't had any adjustments since 2013 prior to that. So I feel like, I'm speaking for myself, I feel like that the countywide elected officials are being compensated fairly for what we have proposed. I realize y'all don't have any type of stipend. I've suggested, because y'all do run to the bank with deposits and things of that sort, I have floated the idea, haven't really priced it or anything, but for convenience, safety, and security, maybe we need to hire I'll call it an armor card service, like a Brinks or something like that, that would come by here, pick up the funds, and then take them in. I don't know if it's a break even, but it's more of a safety and security as y'all make deposits, because I know that's a concern that you've expressed to me, also the treasurer's office, and also others within the county that do have cash flow. Commissioners, any comments from you? Thoughts? Not all at once, okay?
I think the salary schedule that we have proposed has compensated our employees fairly. We can only move so much at a time, and we're constantly tweaking it. We're pretty close to the end of the budget process, and I'm not in favor of changing it at this time.
The adjustment that was made for the commissioners was to bring the commissioners, and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, was to bring them back up to the level of the other countywide elected officials, i.e. treasurer's office, district clerk, county clerk, and tax assessor collector?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I get my numbers correctly, that was a 5% increase,
I'm sorry?
5% in 2018,
On the,
because it's had
The
some
adjustment,
adjustments,
yeah,
like
okay.
cost of living adjustments, so
okay.
it took that number a little different, higher.
So that would make a total of about 9.5% in the last couple of years.
It was actually a little more than 5%,
It was more?
a little bit more.
So between 9.5% and 10% over the last 3 years. Okay. Fair enough. Mary Ann, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you for speaking up. Any other comments, Commissioner? On that item?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any other areas to discuss on the proposed budget for 2020?
I think there were some notes brought in about
Okay.
certificate pay from the, I'm not sure what meeting it was when we did the transfer. And you said we would talk about them in the budget hearing.
Oh, certificate pay for the DA's office.
Yes.
Okay, refresh my memory, Commissioner.
She has a certificate pay that she was, I guess, bringing over from the sheriff. It wasn't coming.
Oh, that was right.
Miss- you have a representative
From
the
dispatch,
DA's office.
bringing over from dispatch
Yes.
to the DA's office. They have the certificate pay there.
Mhm.
The question was, are they gonna bring it over here? John, do you want to come to the podium, would you? Identify yourself and let me ask a couple of questions. Because I think we had the discussion, or we asked the question, is there benefit or value of that certificate? What all it entails being brought over to the DA's office?
Yes, sir. So my name is Investigator John Wren. I work for the District Attorney's Office, which is Budget 430. The employee that we're talking about is Tammy Castro. Today's her first day in our office. She came to us from the Sheriff's Office, and she has a master telecommunicator license. Our office had requested that she be allowed to continue to get her certificate pay because she brings with her the master's license, which takes 8 years to get, 500 hours of training at a minimum. She'll be running our TLITS machine. We're one of 3 agencies in the county that has that.
You want to explain that?
TLITS machine is the computer system statewide and national, TCIC, NCIC, or TLITS inlets, that law enforcement agencies use to communicate with one another. It's got criminal history information, wanted people, stolen vehicles, all of that kind of stuff that only law enforcement agencies can access. So we have one of the 3, our office, Navasota PD, and the Sheriff's Office are the only 3 in the county. Our office has the ability to hold the license for her, her telecommunicator license, because we are a law enforcement agency through the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. And it will be a part of her job. She'll become our terminal agency coordinator, which is the person who deals with the audits and deals with the documentation that the state requires for us to have that terminal. And all of what I just said has a great deal to do with why we wanted her for our office, because her coming in allowed us to have somebody immediately that could do that, because with the loss of Laura Zaragoza, we weren't going to have anybody presently that could do it.
That's not required. A master's certificate is not required to do what she needs to do.
Required? No, sir. But in that line of thinking, I have a master's as a police officer, and it's not required for the position either. But it's a bonus to the county that she comes in with that kind of training and experience.
And it's something that she will use on the job?
Yes, certainly.
Does that certificate particularly pertain to that program that you're going to be using?
That's it.
And I appreciate, Mary, would you be recognized in the future with your
Sure.
question? All right, go ahead.
So a telecommunicator license encompasses all of the things. It has to do with dispatching, it has to do with running the machine, and anything that has to do with communicating through law enforcement. It's kind of like a police officer's license, and depending on what facet you're doing.
Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Brenda Williams. And it also helps us locate people that we need for court. Sometime in the beginning of a case, you may have all the information, but because of our backlog, we're catching up, we lose them. And they change addresses for one reason or another. So through that, we're able to locate them so we can pursue our cases.
Okay. Thank you.
And that certificate pay was what,
$1,800 for the master's.
It's standard for across all the agencies that have it.
There are 3 levels. There's a 600, 1,200, 1,800.
Yes, sir.
18 is a master.
Intermediate, advanced, and masters
Right.
based on the license type that you have.
Jesse Murphy, do we have that currently in the budget?
No.
We do not, okay. John C., since this is a budget workshop discussion, is it inappropriate or is it appropriate to make a motion and approve it to be put into the budget?
Just set for review, right? It's not set for action.
Right, okay.
I think it become, if you,
If we modify, we'd have to have
Yes.
an agenda item. Okay. You have room on the 28th?
We're also supposed to approve the budget on the 28th. So if we're not,
It's all part
we
of the
know.
budget.
Yeah. Okay. Was that the, Commissioner, is that the only note that you had on?
That's the one I had from that meeting.
Right. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was it. If, in this meeting, will we, do we need, was today the day we were gonna talk any about bond council?
The who?
Bond council?
Well, it's anything that's appropriate to talk about regarding the budget of 2020.
I think we were trying to clarify some things on a timeline at,
Ben Rosenberg was, oh, got you stuck in the corner. Ben, could you come up and address the court, please, sir?
Sure.
Would you identify for those that might not know you? And you had mentioned before the meeting, you had some timeline clarification to help us with?
Right, Ben Rosenberg with U.S. Capital Advisors. You recently hired me to serve as financial advisor for this upcoming potential tax note issue. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here last week when you had the update from PGAL. I was at another court meeting. And there was some question about hiring the bond lawyer. And there was miscommunication from last time that I was here. I thought when we left that I was told the county attorney had to hire the bond lawyer, and he just had to approve I think the attorney being hired. And so I had not solicited on your behalf a bond counsel firm, so I did do that as of Friday, and we'll have the proposals in, I think on the 21st. It's sort of informal. Again, they work on a contingent fee. There is no additional fee for them unless you borrow the money. All their fees, we estimate all the fees for all the costs of issuance. The fee was in that. So again, we didn't know who you're going to hire, but hopefully we have a conservative amount in that cost of issuance amount. So
We were provided a list of qualified bond attorneys.
right, and those are just people that we've worked with in the past, and they work for the court and they work for the county. So I don't want to hire the bond counsel. They work for you. They have fiduciary responsibility to you, attorney-client privilege. So I sent out a request for them to submit qualifications and references to you on the 21st, and then in the next court meeting, you'd have a full week to review those, and the next court meeting, you could potentially pick one. And then I readjusted the timetable I sent out before to accommodate that with one specific note. And I don't know if you remember, when I said in an ideal world, we would borrow money at the same court meeting when you'd award the construction bids. And now y'all shifted that by a week. And so, do that. There you go. Sure, sorry. I could send this electronic too, but, and so what I did is, once you produce the offering documents, and producing the offering documents are these standard offering documents that are used by the market. And if you notice here, we send those documents back and forth a couple times, and that's to the bond attorney to make sure all the legal stuff is in there, because that changes on a regular basis, and especially with the latest legislative session. So what I've done is I've reduced the time for review on each of those little sessions so we can send those back and forth. Still have a rating, push the rating call a couple weeks, but we can still sell these tax notes on the October 23rd meeting like we had talked about before. There is a law, and then that's why we had the bond lawyer on board, but that you can only assess a tax rate at a regularly scheduled meeting. So the fact that you move the contract award date a week, we can't sell tax notes on that meeting date. So I left it at the week before. You're still gonna get bids on October the 10th, right? So you'll know what construction bids are. And then we would be set to sell those on the 23rd as we had planned. And you'll have about 2 weeks to, might not have it awarded, but that way you'll have the money committed and allow you to award the bids the following week, if that's acceptable to the court. Otherwise, we probably need to move the construction awards to the following 2 weeks, and then we can do this tax note sale 2 weeks later. So that's just one of the little nuances that we don't need a bond attorney for to, because when you award the sale of the tax note, you're in essence assessing an INS tax, and you have to do that at a regularly scheduled meeting. And the statutes, well, I'll get the statutes for you, but I'm quoting bond law now. So what I've done is this schedule is, I just basically reduced the amount of time for review of these offering documents. We send them back and forth 3 times between us and you and the bond attorney. And so I just condensed that a little bit and moved the rating call a week later. But we'll still be able to finish and get it publicized on the 15th of October and award, or bring these to the tax note sale to you on the 23rd as planned.
Well, I know our county attorney can meet the deadlines. What do you think about that outside help though, John?
You won't know until you talk to them, like Ben said, we won't have that information until midweek. And then you'll have to decide who you're gonna pick.
And we sent this timetable to them. So all the 5 firms that we sent this to you on your behalf, they have this timetable, so if they have any comments, they could say it. And you know, they don't come out like I do. But once you send the email that we sent, they'll be very responsive, and they just work a little different than financial guys do. Once we're at this stage of the game is when they get involved, but they'll be very responsive, and if they can't meet this timetable, which I think they can, they'll let us know in their response.
I wanted to say I did go back and consult with the public finance book, and the last sentence under bond counsel was, and this was some of the concerns that were raised, that we would spend money for bond counsel or commit to spend it. But it says bond counsel is usually compensated only if bonds are sold or from bond proceeds. Is that?
That's what I mean by contingent fee, just like us. If you, until you get to that October 23rd meeting, and the bids come in at $8 million, and you say, we don't need to borrow any money, then the only fee that you might be contingent, or have to pay would be the rating fee if we get to that process before you would say, we're not gonna do we're not gonna borrow the money. So they work on a contingent fee only at the time of closing do they actually earn that fee.
And you said you may have to pay a rating fee?
A rating fee is a third-party credit rating agency that we suggest you use, and they'll establish a credit rating which will give you the best interest rate in the market. They require you to have a credit rating, and so if they issue that rating, they've gone through that process and issued that rating, then you would be subject to that fee if you decided we're not going to borrow the money.
Do you have a feel for what that typically runs?
And again, it's based on the size of the amount that you borrow, but probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 range that we have estimated for that fee.
On your responsibility list, I'm assuming we're C and you're
Correct.
FA and he's BC, bond counsel.
There's at the bottom, there's a legend of what those initials are.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
All right.
Okay.
And did I hear you correctly, you're going to obtain the proposals and provide them back to us?
I told them to send it directly to you guys on the 21st, and so you'd have a full week to review those letters of letter of engagement, references, and qualifications. And then you could award it or select one the following on the 28th of the regular scheduled meeting.
John, is your court schedule going to allow you time to review? Because me personally, I'm going to rely heavily upon your thoughts.
Sure, I'll be happy to review it, but, well, I mean, if it's bond counsel information, as I said to you previously, it's a niche deal. I have no experience with it. I'll be happy to talk to whomever the court decides to hire and translate as best I can. But I'll be present for anything that you all need. If I could, since you've gone, I assume that at some point you're gonna know what the number is that includes PGAL, for PGAL's additional work, in addition to the construction, in addition to the contingency on top of the amount that you're gonna take as a lump, right? All of that, at some point, you're gonna know what that full number is, because you had a construction number the other day with the contingency built in, but I don't know that it included the fee for financial advisor, the fee for, obviously their number is based upon the amount that you take, but you have to take more than what's necessary for the construction in order for them to be paid.
Right.
I'm just assuming that at some point, you'll know what that full number is.
Once you get the construction
Commissioner
bids
Mallett,
in.
you feel like
Yeah,
that's all
once we get
covered?
once we get the construction bids in, we'll know what the other fees, he gave us an estimate, I think, of those fee schedules.
All the fees are, and all the
that'll
numbers
be-
will be run for you over the
and
years.
then all
They're
those will
always
be
the
run
cost of
once we get
issuance
the-
and underwriter's discount costs. They're estimates, but we're pretty conservative on those. It should be well within the numbers.
Is the bond council's fee, is that a flat fee?
It's a percentage based on how much you borrow.
And that's my point, is if you just thought you were borrowing $5 million because that's all that's needed for construction, you haven't included in that the cost for these various contingencies that exist, as well as PGAL. I mean, you've had PGAL design it now, but if they're gonna serve as the contractor on it, or continue to serve as the architect, or whatever their role is, there's a continued fee there. I just wanna be sure that there's nobody's surprised when you say we're taking a loan for tax notes for X amount. It turns out that you have a Y amount that is an obligation.
It's like somebody buying a house, and it's just, this is what the house is, but then you've got to have the insurance, the taxes, and mortgage, insurance and so forth, so. It goes from $1,000 a month to $1,500 a month ago. How'd that happen?
No action is needed for this. It's just sort of clarification. I listened to your tape, and I adjusted the schedule to meet your timeline. The only little bitch there now is that we need to award the tax notes at a regularly scheduled meeting. But the fact you had the bids coming in 2 weeks before that, I think if I didn't say, okay, this is how much the project is looking like it's gonna be, this is how much we have saved, and this is how much we need to borrow, and that's the little chunk I'm filling in. So, and if you don't know it, then we could postpone it for 2 weeks at that time.
I think financial institutions, attorneys, and the legislature are in cahoots with each other to make this difficult for commissioners' courts.
That's why I'm here to try to answer your questions.
Not all attorneys. Any other questions for Ben?
Thank you, Ms. Rosenthal.
It's helpful. Thanks for the clarification. Commissioner Mallett, anything else to offer on this discussion?
I believe it was covered pretty well.
Commissioner Dobianski, anything else in regards to the
I don't have anything.
the proposed budget? Commissioner Walker, anything additional?
I'm just gonna ask, we haven't changed the proposed budget from what we received? Any?
I believe the answer to that is,
Yes, we have.
yeah.
We have.
Yes, y'all.
Can you kind of list out?
Yes. The last agenda, the DA and county court at law, the 10-430, and then the 10-437, those have changed based upon what was approved last meeting, not last meeting, but 2 meetings prior.
So the DA's office and the county court at law, the adjustments we've made,
Yes, moving the tenure from the DAs to the county court at law, or the longevity, and then
But that's in the numbers right now, yes?
That's not in the numbers you have currently, that was changed after.
Okay.
And then I believe it was approved, like the DA's approved for an extra $1,000 to cover their readjustment. Were they approved for that, or did we say no, Macomb? I don't have that.
I don't believe we approved that.
Okay.
John Wren's still here? John Wren's gone? Okay.
It might
But,
just be
'cause I told-
shuffling the salaries is
Because
what
he
it
was, because he wanted to take and utilize it all, and we weren't in agreement to use all of the difference that he had.
Based upon what was approved, I
Right.
can't recall at this particular moment, that was changed. The benchmark for the county attorney that was changed, where that was House Bill 2384, approving that part. And then the other one would be on the SROs. The SROs, we had to go in and verify. There was an employee who was going to move up in their years of experience within the middle of the year, next budget year, so we had to adjust that to compensate for that. Is that correct? We also, according to House Bill 1495, we created a line, 2 lines, basically for past year expenditures for legislative and administrative activities, and then proposed expenditures for that. It's 0 in the amount, but
Right.
we did create those 2 lines.
Because that goes into effect October 1.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was that lobbyist business?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mary Nicholas, did they get a clarification like tax annual fees? Does that go to that account, or is that absorbed just in regular dues?
Tax annual fees, we had been budgeting.
I thought that got waived. I mean, not the fees get it, but I thought it got waived from having to be put in the Bill 1495. Am I right or wrong on that?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
All right.
I haven't seen anything come across that says that it covers that.
I was saying that Jim Allison had sent something out
He
that
did.
those weren't gonna have to be put in that category.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
I
remember
saw the
thinking?
same, I saw the same thing, but I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
That sounds right, though,
That's
some
what-
update from
that's
Jim
from
Allison.
Jim.
I can confirm that, but I have seen that from a source that would qualify as an authority who's indicated that TAC doesn't apply to that, or that
So
doesn't apply to
the
TAC.
TAC money's in the budget. The question then would be, Mary and Jesse, does it need to go to that particular line item? Is that?
I don't think it does, but we'll double check.
I agree. I don't think it does either, but, okay. So the first one is 0. What's the second one then? The second line?
0.
Okay. Excellent. That keeps us out of issue on that House bill, I think.
And nothing was approved for the DA's
Right.
office, it was just moving, so their line item would reduce by the $1.20, and that would be transferred over to the county court at law.
Okay, so we're good there.
Yes.
All right. Let me get Commissioner Cox first. Commissioner Cox, do you have any notes?
I
or-
do, yes.
Okay.
Are we talking about a particular subject, or are we?
We're talking about the budget.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fairgrounds.
Okay?
We've done a lot of work on the fairgrounds this past year and have the fairgrounds, some of the needed repairs done at the fairgrounds, but there's still quite a few that need to be accomplished. And I asked the fairgrounds manager to create a list of projects that need to be completed out at the fairgrounds, and his list includes everything that would not necessarily be fluff projects, and I don't mind going down that list.
Can you give us his budget number?
Fund 36.
And Commissioner Cox and I have had the opportunity to discuss this together, but Commissioner, if you'd share with the other commissioners, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So right now in the proposed budget, there's $45,000 budgeted for maintenance and repairs, and that's just bare minimum to get the fairground by for the year. But there needs to be a new air conditioner. We need a new water well. I'd like to see some energy controls in place. We need to repaint the barns, repaint the inside of the main hall, repair the walk-in cooler, replace the parking lot lights, replace the lights under the barn, replace the ceiling tiles in the Lions Club hall, and replace the floor covering in the main hall. So after looking at this list and having some discussions, the number one priorities for these listed projects, according to the fairgrounds manager, as well as the discussion the judge and I had, would be to drill a new water well. They had some water issues at the last big event, or the Grimes County Fair, and I think that continues to be a problem. And I believe if we don't keep it cool, less likelihood of it being rented out, and that's where we're headed. The fairgrounds is rented out, last time I checked, every weekend through the rest of the year. So it is generating some funds. Is it paying for itself? Probably not, but it is offsetting some of the expenses. And then if we were to put a new AC in there, I would recommend that at the same time we start talking about looking at some energy control units, kind of mitigate some of those.
The water well had a $25,000 price tag.
$25,000.
The AC was 10?
14.
No, 14, and the controls?
12.
12.
So those three items total $51,000.
Was there any further discussion on the water wells of any of the associations that utilize that facility? I know that was it Go Texan that worked the deal on the sign?
Yes.
Okay.
There has been some discussion with some of the support groups out there. I'm hesitant to name any names or levels of commitment that they would be willing to undertake. But there is some interest in offsetting some of the expenses out there as well. But I do think that at a minimum, those three projects probably need to be budgeted in this year.
What was the price tag of painting under the barn?
That is $60,000 to repaint the barn.
Okay.
Which is, if you've been out there lately, it's in dire need of a new paint job.
Well, and I think that's also something that we need to consider before the rest sets in and gets out of hand, and then we start having not just painting, but having repairs. So.
I mean, if it were up to me, I'd like to include all of them at this time to start getting the facility in better shape. It is a county asset.
Commissioner, could I ask a question? Harry Walker, Road and Bridge Engineer. I hadn't planned to talk to this because I didn't know it would come up this morning, but in your discussion, did y'all talk about work on the septic system out there?
There's some talk about some things to do, yes.
That should be a top priority for that facility.
I think there's some discussion with one of the support groups about doing some things with the restrooms out there.
Not the restrooms, the septic facility. I know when Marissa was still here, she had gotten an estimate for upgrading that septic system that at that time was about $50,000. It's a significant expense, and just want to throw that out there. It needs to be a consideration.
I think Kat was trying to get your attention. I think Kat was trying
The septic system at the fairgrounds, I was went out and worked with Marissa and looked at the system back when we had some issue, not this past fair, but the fair before. We had septic issue out there. And it does, when we have a big events for several days, that's when the issues take place, and they're only gonna start to get worse. There's like 2 systems, and things are ran around the fairgrounds. From the left side runs behind, back to the back. The building runs over behind the barns, and the lids needed replacing at one time. There were several different tanks that probably need to be replaced at this time from when we did our initial inspection a couple of years ago. So I know for a fact that those things probably need to be replaced sooner rather than later.
So based on that information, I'd recommend septic system needs to be repaired as well.
to. Can you talk a little bit more about controls? What are you speaking of in terms of control?
Controls that will mitigate some of the high energy use at the fairgrounds so that
So it doesn't surge.
It's the demand charge that we are continued, even if we're not using it, we've charged it for the remainder of the year,
Yeah.
based on 1 week's worth of.
I thought we
Electricity.
had that. So is the controls going to help with that issue?
Yes, in the main hall especially, because what happens right now when those air conditioners are all set to come on at the same time, if they all come on at the same time, it's creating a surge on that facility. If you alternate those coming on, space them out, then you're not getting that big demand all at one time, and it will cut back on the bill. Mid-South had talked to us about that several years ago, about putting in that system, but it's never been put in. And I think it would pay for itself pretty quick if that happened.
Well, I guess-
Another note on the sign that was put up out there, that cost the Go Texan Committee over $17,000 to put that up.
Yeah.
Is that the same as when the newer systems now, they phase on?
Probably.
Well, it's a control, if they have the controls on.
Yeah, most of,
Compressors
come on. The units now, you can get a phase on AC. And it doesn't sound like you're talking about a huge AC, are you?
It's a
What is that?
10-ton.
10-ton? But they do have, I don't know if that covers everything that you're talking about phasing on, but they do have the ones that phase on. I know by train that come on, it's staggered. Just had one installed, so I just didn't know if it was the same type of control that can be controlled within the purchase of the unit that you're buying. I don't know if that helps, but it staggers on.
It's the same concept.
Same concept.
Al Peeler, you're quietly sitting there. Do you have any experience in these?
Control system is the best thing you can put on a big building like that. Because and I don't know the control system they're gonna use, but I can go, like the courthouse, my control system, if I wanna shut it off at a certain time, when it's not being in use, I can turn it down or off, and it will not allow all the units to come on. What you're talking about is variable speed fan drives, which is another good deal. I don't know anything about what they're doing, but the option for a control system, any control system put on an AC system allows the operator or the manager to control like if you go in, you run it out, and the first thing people say, oh, it's hot in here. But when you got 400 people in the room, it's gonna be hot. And the first thing they wanna do is drop the AC. Well, that's not always good on your power usage then. So if you just steadily let it go down, that'll help you. And I agree with Commissioner Dobianski that in the end, it will pay, a good control system will pay for itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Commissioner Cox, are you talking about in addition to what we've already built into the budget?
In addition, yes.
Because as he said, we only have 40, I say only, we have 45,000 in there for maintenance and repair.
And last year we had 85. So was that reduced when we were first looking for money to reduce because of the shortage we thought we had?
No,
Mary?
that was put in there because, the loan was coming to an end, and, part of the discussion that we had with several of the associations out there was that it meant that buildings needed to be painted and some other work needed to be done. And so we increased that repairs and maintenance budget for 1 year to get as many of those projects done as we could.
In that discussion, I thought we talked about that we would continue the projects that were needed because there were numerous. You've heard him talk about the numerous projects. So I was just trying to find out if we just dropped that number because of the shortage we had, or, okay. Because some numbers we didn't go back and change, so I didn't know if that was a number.
When I took the first hit, then and Jesse Murphy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I took 40,000 out of that area.
You did.
Because of the usage and so forth.
So you're wanting to increase it up to 96,000? If you're doing 51 plus the 45 that's currently in there.
I'd like to do them all.
And what's the total of all?
After the septic system, it's 248.
248?
That includes the painting of the building, outside buildings out there. And the outside buildings are gonna probably cost about $60,000, the last thing that I heard on.
Yeah, that's right. If we look at the direction that we've come, or the distance that we've come this past year, there've been a lot of improvements done out at the fairground that were in dire need of happening. And it's still not encompassing all of the needs out at that facility or out at the venue. If we're gonna continue to try to promote that as a facility for people to come have functions, we probably need to look at some of these other things. It's a Grimes County asset. It's the people's asset. And for whatever reason, some of these things haven't been done in quite some time. And it's getting to the point where if they're not done, the facility will continue to deteriorate, and I just don't think that's the right direction to be going. We've already made some headway. We're fixing possibly to have some other expenditures in the future, and we have the ability to take care of these now. And my guess is if you start taking care of some of these projects, that the maintenance maintenance and repairs will probably, that budget line item will probably decrease.
Mary has a comment.
Mary?
Judge, I just wanted to comment that the sewer system has been an issue for multiple years.
Ever since it was put in.
Probably at least 8 to 10 years, there's been some major issues
Why didn't you get those other courts to fix it?
Huh?
Why didn't you get those other courts to fix it?
Because they didn't want to.
They never wanted to spend any money on it.
But eventually.
And that's why the groups came together twice to save that place. We spent, the last time we borrowed I think it was $300,000 to do that and paid it back, because the county was not putting any money into it.
Your revenue on that building, am I looking at it correctly? Down in, on page 27 of 38? Are you on that page?
Well, we budgeted to receive, in rentals at the fairground, 42,000 for next year. And then the rest, the county puts in. We don't budget for the, cleaning deposits because we never know, how many we're actually gonna have, and then we do pay someone to come in and clean, afterwards, and we pay them from that.
So the difference between the rental you're proposing an increase this year, but we also saw it, am I looking at a decrease?
Well,
Or
from
that's
last year's
actual
budget,
experience?
We decreased it by
That's actual
40
experience.
grand. From last year's budget for the proposed budget, or from this current year that we're in, to the proposed budget, it was cut by 40 grand. And you say, well, it's not quite 40 grand or whatever. It's right at it. The little difference is the 2.5% increase in salaries.
Commissioner Cox, have we given it a serious look at the current fees that are charged? And when I say serious look, to the point of ready to make a proposal of a change of fees, or?
It's something that the court should consider in the near future. I mean, especially if we do these projects. I've been to several of the facilities in counties around here, and we're pretty low in comparison to what they charge. But of course, their facilities, the one I'm thinking about is probably Cadillac, but that's up in Leon County. I mean, it's an enclosed arena, and they can probably demand more money for it. But with our facilities being rented out every weekend for the remainder of this year, and they have been rented out, that's an indication that it's in.
Possibly be too low.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't want to price it so high that it's not rented, but there's certainly a demand for it.
Well, and I said that because if you look at the venues that have come into the county, you know, to rent a venue, you might be paying about $3,000 a night, and if I think we rent for what, $1,800 on the weekend?
It's not that high.
It's not that high. It's almost 50% less of what a venue that could attribute to why it stays so booked. I'm just saying, it's a lot of venues, and they're being rented out at that price, their price that they're offering. So what I guess I was saying is maybe ours is just a weed.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to look at that sometime in the future too.
Well, it's not only a factor of repairing what we have and taking care of what we have. I know Randy Krieger, our fairgrounds manager, has said that if we had the other arena, the rodeo arena covered, he felt like he could probably book that almost every weekend.
Yeah. That's not on the list that I have here.
No, I understand, because that, I forget what that number was, or I forget what our discussions were on that, but
on the day that we adopt, maybe he could present that number. Because if it's gonna increase the revenue that comes in, then that would definitely offset some of the requests that are being
Some
made.
of these maintenance expenses, yeah.
Yes. I'm not seeing all of the numbers that I would like to see, your list, you know, because I'm not sure what you said on some of them. But just, I think priority is good. And certainly taking care of any systems that we need to take care of. But, I mean, it would be just balancing what's the most important. I mean, we're going some places that we haven't been. I don't know if you want to do it all at one time like he suggests, or that you phase it. I think we talked about initially doing it in phases. And so without all of the numbers,
Well, we could also take the approach that we dedicate some of these issues that we feel like we need to take care of now, even though all of them are now, but at least do priority ones or priority ones and twos, and then take a hard look at our fees, and then based on additional revenues coming in from bookings, then you start picking up your priority threes and fours, or, you know, start working from the back end.
I think it should be a plan, not just because we had the extra money, we just spent it all.
I hadn't had that extra money.
That's what I say, you might not, you're doing a whole lot.
So it still brings us back to the commissioner's original task of the, correct me if I'm wrong, the AC, the water well, and was it
Control.
energy controls?
And now
And the
we
septic.
have additional septic
Yeah.
issues that we probably need to take a hard look at. So you're looking at right around $100,000.
And I'm not, Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not saying that we don't need to revamp the septic system, but wasn't Randy prepared for the fair period to have our tanks pumped or something to
Yes.
make sure that we didn't have a problem? And that's not the most economical way to do it, but it is cheaper than 50,000.
Yeah, the problem out there is you've got several different tanks. You've got two big systems out there. And the one system is really, doesn't have the capacity to take care of what it's taking care of. I believe is one of the issues with that. So, and then you had some minor things that Mr. Alphen had taken care of, such as cracked lids. And I believe there's still a pump out there that's maybe not working correctly either. Because up until Marissa and I went out there and looked, nobody really knew exactly what was going where and how things were laid out there. But I did have my employees send me over the estimate that Marissa had got originally.
And that's gonna be what, 2 years old?
Yes, that was $49,650.
See, that's not even 50,000.
I'd like to hear the numbers of what it would cost to cover the arena. I mean, if it's gonna bring in revenue.
Well, we gotta fix, and I don't disagree with you. But I think our priority needs to be fix what we've got now.
All of them?
Rather than start you divert all that money to cover the arena, but you neglect what we have identified as projects now. I'm not saying that a covered arena may not be something to look at in the future, and even now if you want to, but I think if you're gonna start talking about spending that kind of money, which I believe is probably and I'm just guessing here, roughly, I would guess probably at a minimum, $250,000, probably more.
To cover? I bet closer to half.
Maybe so.
And if you don't fix the large buildings back there, the painting, the sheet metal, and the structure of the building, you'll be replacing all of that, and that's gonna be a big, big deal.
I think the priority should be to fix what we have now, and then if we need to later on in the future, look at maybe doing a covered arena, that's something.
Yeah.
I guess my understanding. This is a Cherie and Mary question. We have to have the budget approved by September?
By the end of September.
Ma'am?
By the end of September.
And I think currently that's the 28th or something like that? All right, so between now and then, what are our legislative date requirements?
Jesse's got her calendar.
Is Ben Rosenberg still here?
He was out in the hallway there. Commissioner Cox, where did the bid for the energy controls come from?
I'm not real sure about that. I'd have to talk with Randy about that. I was thinking about that, and I can't remember for the
The
life of me.
Mid-South had approached I know they approached, I think the Fair Association or maybe Wayne several years ago about us putting in a system, and if we talk to them, maybe they will help us with that.
Yeah, and there are some groups that, it's my understanding, that are willing to contribute some funds. As far as the amount that they can contribute, and I don't want to put anybody on the hook or name anybody.
So I guess what I was gonna ask is, and Mary, and John, if you have any thought, I know you don't have any bond knowledge, but if we're gonna borrow money, and we're gonna borrow money for the law center, can you put another $200,000 on that note, or another $300,000 on that note that doesn't go to that project, but is utilized within the county on other expenses? Anybody know the answer to that?
It's borrowing money, I think it doesn't really matter what we use it for.
Well, but I mean, if we say, okay, we're gonna borrow.
Unless we
let's just
inform everyone of
We
what we
got,
want to do.
we got 10 million, we're gonna borrow 5 million, and it's gonna take 15 million to get the law center built. Said, well, okay, we're not gonna borrow 5 million, we're gonna borrow 5.5 million, and we take that other 500,000 and we utilize it for, the kinds of things that we're talking about, to play catch up and to take care of, if you put a cover over the arena to generate more capital. Are we restricted as to how those funds would be used? Because you can't borrow and just set it in the bank, I know that.
Right, it's a tax note, and so we need Ben or bond counsel to tell us. It's different than if it was a CO, or if you were doing something like that, I'd be convinced that you'd have to have permission, or you'd have to set out what the expenditure was gonna be for. And you're not asking my opinion, but don't do that.
Okay?
Pinch pennies in the budget, pay it out of the budget.
Yeah, no, okay.
Don't borrow money.
I agree, debt free is the best way.
And please keep in mind that in the event we're moving to a new building, and you're talking about moving an adult probation back to this building has to be reconfigured, and there's costs there.
Right. Okay, back to Cherie and Mary. So if we need to have further budget discussions after we get some more numbers, does the calendar, what does the calendar allow for us?
So I know that we have to do the hearings on the tax rate within so many days of the adoption.
But the tax rate's not changing. we,
It's a formality.
It's a
right,
formality that's
Okay.
addressed in local government code.
We've had hearings before up into, almost the deadline. Some of them
This should be fine.
on the deadline.
so we just need to,
I don't think there's any other statutes that keep us from putting it off a little bit longer. Just
Yeah.
gotta be mindful of when we adopt that tax rate, whatever but that's just a number. We can
yeah,
figure that out.
okay. All right. So, court, are we of the opinion that we want Commissioner Cox to get some additional numbers or more exact numbers if time permits? And then the possibility of allocating more funds to the fairgrounds from the 45,000? Is there a consensus? We don't need to take action, but I mean,
Yes.
So what is that, you want me to get an estimate on how much it would cost to cover the event?
I think that was Commissioner Walker's wish.
And then you just talked about seeking additional help in some of those
Talking to
areas.
Mid-South Synergy about the
Get some input from them.
system. Because they do have some systems in there that they kind of push.
How many units do we have over there, Philip, do you know?
Right
Commissioner?
off the top of my head, I think there's. I don't-
6? Is it 5?
Are you talking me?
Well, you're out there going like this.
5 in the main building.
5, okay. And are those all 10-ton now?
Probably.
Close to?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I have very limited knowledge about that building as your fair board manager. I mean.
Okay, thank you.
He takes care of it.
Okay, so the calendar does permit for us to do a hash on
I
it.
can't give you the
Okay.
dates exactly, but yeah.
But we can review and take action at that time. And then, Mary, what are our obligations for reposts, or do we have to run ads again and all that business on a proposed budget?
No. Because the proposed budget is already
preliminary.
filed.
Yeah,
And so you don't have to do anything. When it comes before the court to approve the budget, we will have all the changes in there,
okay.
and y'all can go over the changes, and then,
So we've met the obligation on the statute of our preliminary budget, because that's out there, posted and advertised. Okay, very good. Mr. Walker, you probably wanted to give us $500,000 out of your budget and solve all of our problems, right?
No.
Probably. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
This is a little out of sequence, but maybe just treat it as a placeholder in the
The
future
next-
budget
all right.
discussions. Depending on what happens with the next agenda, I told you I could take on some of those roles.
Yes, sir.
I have gotten some pushback from my staff about that they would like some consideration for taking on additional duties. I'd just like to say we'd like to give some consideration to that before you finalize the budget. And that, depending on how this next discussion goes, that may become a moot point.
Okay. Is there anything you want to share with us at this time? Okay. Thank you, sir. Commissioners, anything else at this point? Hearing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 3?
I make the motion that we adjourn.
Second. There's a motion before the court on agenda item number 3 to adjourn by Commissioner Walker, seconded by Commissioner Mallett. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.